Introduction. Journal. February 2011. It had always been a problem. From the very first time he started writing. No matter how much research, thought, or days, weeks, months of planning, structuring, developing characters, and an overall plot, deciding where and when to start a story always presented a seemingly insurmountable challenge. And this screenplay was no different. To make a career out of filling blank pages was a true love-hate relationship. In the beginning, hate mostly. Searching to find a way into any story was like trying to figure out how to enter a gigantic puzzle, a maze, so complex it would occupy his mind each and every day, and keep him awake most nights. It was almost masochistic. Torture. Yet he couldn't help himself. It was something Ray always felt compelled to do, like a calling he wished he never had. He was sitting at his desk in the Florida room of his holiday home in Australia, on the Gold Coast in Queensland, near the Warner Brothers theme park, which also had an impressive studio facility, with several sound stages, a state-of-the-art post-production facility, and a good range of available crews. Many Hollywood productions had been filmed there, and it would be perfect for a production like The Tribe. Good weather, important for any location footage, with mostly sunny, deep blue skies, very similar to the weather in California. It was hardly surprising that the Warner Brothers lot was marketed as Hollywood on the Gold Coast. The bonus was that it was only about a 10-minute drive away, offering a few valuable minutes to sleep in. Important when you have to get up so early when in production, with unit call often being as early as 5 a.m. The television series of The Tribe, along with most of Ray's other productions, had been filmed in New Zealand. A country with such breathtaking scenery, diverse locations, facilities, and such talented crews. Although Queensland, Australia, was an option, along with other countries, it would be difficult to choose anywhere else better to shoot the motion picture version. Especially since Ray also had an affinity with the land of the long white cloud. Considering himself to be an adopted Kiwi, New Zealand was his prime home base, where he would spend as much time as he could on his vineyard, with the natural world of viticulture providing a welcome contrast to the motion picture and television industry. But just as Mother Nature presented all manner of obstacles before any grape was harvested, bottled, and enjoyed in a glass, there were probably more hurdles in bringing a television series or motion picture to fruition. The first one being to develop and deliver a screenplay, which works. That was the blueprint for any successful production. Ray had long discovered when he first started out in the industry that the old saying of, "If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the screen," to be very apt, though some considered it to be no more than a superficial adage concocted by a writer at some point. Writers would say that, wouldn't they? He reread the first 3 pages of the screenplay, wiped at small beads of perspiration from his forehead, wondering if it could actually be blood. At times it felt that way, as if he was spilling blood on every page, with every word not only ripping his heart out, but his very soul. The Florida room was screened in to protect against any insects. A gentle breeze flowed through the wire mesh, ruffling paperwork on the desk. But the humidity was increasing, as it is prone to do in this subtropical region every February, and it felt like someone was standing nearby with a hairdryer, blasting warm, sickly air. To make matters worse, from the weather forecast, the temperature was due to increase even higher. The constant sound of the crickets made it difficult to concentrate. They appeared to be desperate, as if they were complaining that it was too hot. Even the kookaburra perched nearby in a tree seemed to wail for some respite as it emitted its unique, repetitive call. But as it continued, it sounded more like derisory, manic laughter. Ray wondered if the bird had somehow read the first few pages of the screenplay. Hardly surprising, With writer's paranoia being what it is, Ray took a team of them once to a rugby match. When the players huddled in the scrum, he thought that the writers were probably convinced the players were discussing their scripts and being overly critical. When the words don't flow, it's like the whole world knows and points a finger in contempt, drawing attention to signal absolute failure. For all of the stifling heat, just the sheer thought brought an involuntary shiver down his spine. So Ray took some time out for a dip in the pool, deciding to come back to all the writing later. The sun was so intense, it was like a thermostat. Rather than being refreshed, Ray felt as if he was swimming in a bath of warm water, which also seemed to be evaporating in the heat, as fast as any words he could find to fill any blank page. The level of the pool was certainly so much lower than earlier in the morning. Part of the routine after a swim was to do a gentle workout. Nothing too strenuous, it was too hot for that, and Ray was far from being the athletic kind. But he promised himself to try and stay in shape this year, aware that sitting at a desk for hours and hours seized up the body almost as much as choosing what words to type on a page played total havoc with the mind. As he started to stretch, he noticed out of the corner of his eye a kangaroo approaching on the other side of the fence, which separated the garden and landscape grounds bordering the house, with the golf course extending to the distant horizon far beyond. The view was spectacular, like a natural wonderland, acres and acres of greenery, with a huge lake carved out in the middle of the fairway, framed mostly by palm trees, though there were other species like gum, which attracted the occasional koala bear. The water features on the course were not only scenic, but challenged even the best golfer, and had also evolved to become a regular habitat for swans, pelicans, native birds. Others, like galas and multicoloured lorikeets, squawked in the foliage of an abundance of tropical plants, drawn to the exotic fragrances of the natural world. The wildlife never ceased to amaze Ray, particularly that rather than the isolated outback, kangaroos could also be seen so regularly in suburbia, let alone this popular golfing and sailing resort of Sanctuary Cove, where his holiday home was located. He visited as often as he could, as a retreat to escape the pressures that came along with being in the television and motion picture industry. When the kangaroo finally arrived, it watched Ray intently over the fence working out, absolutely fascinated, totally absorbed. Then, suddenly, as Ray stretched to the left, the kangaroo did the same. Ray cast a dumbfounded glance at the animal, who eagerly returned his gaze. That's odd, he thought. Really odd. Then he stretched to the right. The kangaroo repeated the move. What's going on? Ray wondered if he was hallucinating, or had the first aborted pages of the screenplay driven him totally insane. He slowly crouched, circled one arm, then the other. Again, the kangaroo mimicked each move, like a surreal mirror image. "Marina, come here," Ray screamed to his Philippine housemaid, who was dusting inside the house. "Quick!" She rushed through the patio doors and into the Florida room. "What's wrong, Mr. Ray?" Marina inquired, sure that she would find her employer collapsed on the floor from dehydration. I don't know," replied Ray, still staring at the kangaroo in pure disbelief. "Check this out." He stretched to the left, but rather than copy, this time the animal just grazed at a strand of long grass protruding at the bottom of the fence, where the gardener couldn't reach with the lawnmower. He would soon need to clear the area with a strimmer. "No, don't do this to me," Ray sighed in utter frustration. "Do, what, Mr. Ray?" "I wasn't talking to you, Marina. I was talking to the kangaroo." "Huh? The kangaroo, Marina. Maybe he no answer, 'cause he no speak the English." Marina smiled, proud of her own wit. But then, seeing Ray gazing intently at the animal, realised that he was actually serious. "Come on! It's your turn. Show Marina what you can do. Ray called out desperately, circling one arm, trying somehow to encourage the kangaroo to put on a display. The kangaroo took another bite of grass, cast Marina and Ray an impassive, sneering glance, as if to say, humans are crazy, then leapt away, back across the golf course, in search of somewhere more peaceful to graze. I swear, Marina, that kangaroo was copying my workout, doing exactly the same movements. Well, kangaroos got to stay healthy as well, Mr. Ray. Just like you. Now, maybe you've been in sun too long and should have lie down. You don't believe me? You've been working hard all day, Marina said sympathetically. Maybe too hard. And only 3 pages to show for it. Even then I don't know if they work. Why don't you give imagination a rest, and I fix you up a long, cool drink of water? Put some gin in it, Ray sighed. I could do with it today. So would I if I sit at a desk out here in this weather, said Marina, already perspiring in the stifling heat. You could die of heat stroke. Might feel better if working study with air conditioning. Well, then I'd die of pneumonia. It's always so freezing in there. Gotta die of something someday, the housemaid reflected. Make no difference if it pneumonia or heat stroke. Just make sure it not vivid imagination, eh? Marina, ever the philosopher, cast Ray a wise smile, then retreated through the patio doors back into the house, and a welcome blast of Arctic cold air from the conditioning vent. Ray sat at his desk, rocked slowly back and forth on his high-back swivel chair, and thought about what Marina had said. How would he prefer to die? From the cold? Or heat? Or just slowly fading away due to a lack of water? What about starving to death? Better still, being attacked by a petulant kangaroo driven over the edge to strike fatal blows because it didn't like the workout Ray was doing? That would be a dramatic way to go. Then at least Ray wouldn't have to write. The mere thought brought a huge smile. What was that all about? A fear of success, maybe, rather than just failure? Whatever the reason, deep down he knew that it was always the same when he started on a story. Any story. A large part of the process was avoidance. And here he was doing an outstanding job, occupying his mind with killer kangaroos when he should be working out the beginning of the screenplay. If only he had a so-called normal job, or had pursued a different career path. Then he could have just enjoyed a movie or television series like any other member of the public. But no. Rather than restrict himself to being a consumer, he had decided that he would write and produce. To do one was a challenge. To try both was synonymous to embarking upon a self-inflicted nervous breakdown. Yet once he made a start, those initial feelings of torture would also evolve into a rewarding and fulfilling experience. Like climbing a mountain and arriving at the peak against all the odds. It all brought about such a feeling of triumph. So, the paradox was that as difficult as it was to start telling any story, by the time he reached the end, he almost found it even more difficult to stop, to tear himself away from whatever fictional world he had created. And above all from the characters, who had grown from biographical sketches to become real people, friends. And he always missed them, missed spending every day with them morning, noon and night. The phone rang. How's the writing going? It was Ray's assistant, calling from the New Zealand office. Great, replied Ray enthusiastically. But he sounded more convinced than he looked. What page are you up to? Well, I'm not exactly up to any page as such, Ray sighed, trying to remain positive. I've just been sketching out some thoughts. Like where to start? His assistant probed. She had worked long enough with Ray to know the painful process and torment he always seemed to go through. Something like that. Well, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Disturb all you like, Ray scoffed to himself, pleased to be distracted from the task at hand. It's just, I was wondering if you had given any more thought to doing the book, his assistant continued, knowing that Ray had a memory like a goldfish. Yet he also had an instant recall in most matters visual and could identify a stock shot and time code in no time at all, but would struggle to find where he left his car keys even an hour before. What book? Ray inquired warily. The behind the scenes for the Tribe? Ray vaguely remembered answering an email from one of the Tribe fans about the possibility of recording an inside story of how the series came together. One day I could always try and do one, he replied. I'm just not sure if there would be a big enough of a demand and market for it. Well, according to the Facebook team, there is, his assistant stated confidently. So many fans have been posting that they're not only interested in any novels, but would also love to read anything about the making of the actual series. And I keep getting requests from other fans about all the other shows as well. Really? Ray inquired, encouraged that his Cloud9 portfolio of programming touched people in such a way. The company had exported series which Ray had produced to over 130 countries through its distribution subsidiary, Cumulus. Although Ray knew that there was hardly an hour that passed when someone in the world would not be watching one of the episodes, it was still a little overwhelming and difficult to comprehend. Some of the fans are studying media or script writing, and thought a book might also give a few tips. It's amazing, really. So many more are seemingly just as interested to have a behind-the-scenes insight into the industry, as well as your own life and career. Ray had been approached by a few publishers to do an autobiography, but had declined, at least for the time being. He was an intensely private person and decided never to expose his wife or children to what he had to experience being in the public eye and all that entails, preferring to keep details of his personal life separate to his professional one. Besides, he was bound by so many confidentiality clauses in all the contracts he had signed throughout his career that he wouldn't be able to reveal all the details, or he would be in breach until the clauses expired. The biggest problem was, though, as always, with everything going on in Ray's life, he would be stretched to find the time to write a book at present. His assistant, more than anyone, was aware of that, given that she looked after and organised Ray's hectic schedule, and knew that there would be little or no opportunity for a full autobiography for a long while yet. But she thought that if he could combine even some of the elements into a diary of memoirs, he could satisfy at least some of what had been requested, rather than not doing anything at all, even if it was just to let people know of the creative process, like a journal of a writer's mind. I don't think anyone would be interested in that. It'd be like a horror story. But you never know, Ray pondered as they discussed it further. Plus, if I did write one, I'd want to do it in the third person. When Ray finally got around to writing an autobiography, he explained that he would utilise the conventional first person, but for any other form of writing, such as even a non-fiction journal or memoir, he would prefer to write it in the third person, since he would not only be a participant, but still primarily an observer, as he had been in any story to date he had ever told. Should I take that as a yes, then? Maybe. Let's see how the diary is looking in the next few months, and if we can schedule it, we'll take it from there. Ray replaced the receiver and thought about all the fans of the Cloud9 shows. The Tribe fans especially never ceased to amaze him with their loyalty and devotion. The Facebook page was only a few weeks old and had already attracted many thousands who had discovered it through word of mouth and were now interacting with each other from every corner of the globe, united as only true tribal brothers and sisters can. And the Tribe World website would soon be reactivated after being placed on hold along with Series 6, when Ray decided to rest the Tribe. But he was really the one in need of a rest himself. With the advent of so many different platforms coming on stream in the digital domain, at that time, Ray felt that the fans would prefer to utilize outlets such as Wikia, which they could revise and administer, rather than rely on the confines of Tribe World. But, being a traditionalist, let alone sentimental, had left all the content up on the website for posterity, so that fans could refer to it in perpetuity, whenever they wished. The world of the Tribe was certainly unique, special. For many it was more than just a television series, almost a way of life. The underlying thematic of building a better new world order had taken on a life of its own, as had the aspiration for so many to keep the dream alive, in whatever form. An inside story might work well, Ray reflected, and the more he thought about it, decided that if the fans were truly up for it, he would be too. Then it dawned on him. Only one problem, an agonizing one. Where would he start? Marina stepped through the patio doors and placed a long glass of water with ice cubes floating on top on the desk. There you go. Maybe this make you feel better. She watched him sip on the water and noticed that he seemed to be not only preoccupied, but despondent. What is it, Mr. Ray? You look like you got weight of the world on your shoulder. No, I've been struggling all day on the screenplay. Now it seems that I might have to do the same with a book. You want me to get the blue socks? Marina asked, aware that Ray was wearing dark socks, and of all his rituals and superstitions. Or so she thought. They only help when I'm in music mode. Ah, Marina replied, still confused that if wearing the blue socks seemed to inspire Ray to compose, why wouldn't they work writing? They just don't. Ray tried to explain why, knowing that it all sounded more than a little weird. Yes, he had a few obsessions. The blue sock music one, he was able to chart back to the time when he was just a young boy of about 6 years old, and wrote his first song about the death of his beloved dog, Shona. She liked to tug on his favourite blue socks, and for some unexplained, irrational reasoning, Ray had always attributed being able to write the song to wearing the blue socks. So, all through his ensuing career, if he was ever struggling or blocked when composing music or a song, he would search through his wardrobe and sock collection for any coloured blue, and there were many. And when he put them on, for some inexplicable reason, it seemed to help. All in the mind, said Marina. Sure, giving birth to music couldn't just be down to the colour of what socks anyone wore. Ray agreed on one level, but on another level, he was faced with so many soundtrack deadlines that he wasn't taking any chances. A pair of blue socks was always at the top of his Christmas list every year. He was forever intent to ensure he had a good supply. I know, Marina suddenly stated, as she considered the problem further. If the socks no work with writing, and you struggle to think of where to start, then no start at the start. Why no start? In the middle. A light suddenly went on in the darkest recesses of Ray's mind. But wouldn't the middle still be the start? He asked, as he thought more about what Marina was suggesting. It certainly seemed logical, though also illogical, but an interesting notion. No, still middle, Marina replied emphatically, even if middle a start. So, just like blue socks for music, if the brain think you not starting at start, but starting in middle, then maybe you find it easier to start. Even if middle is start. Brain think it middle, so you no have to worry about start. See? Simple. Ray exchanged a long glance with Marina. The way he was feeling today, he would try anything. You know something, Marina? He said amidst a growing sense of relief and hope. Here I am thinking I hired a housekeeper, but I might have actually hired a genius. That Sounds brilliant! Where have you been all my life?